Hello and welcome to the third season of the podcast. I am not your tour guide. My name is Starla Skelton, and I am your hostess on this podcast. For all of you amazing humans that have listened to any of the first two seasons, or if you were on the show, thank you so much for rejoining me. I'm pumped. I'm excited to get this back up and going again. And also a shout out to all the new listeners who are taking a chance and checking out this new podcast. Overall, this is basically just a platform for storytellers that have a desire to share some of their travel wisdom, travel stories. And I am basically a guide that's not a guide. I'm just the person that keeps the flow of the convo and presses the record button. But I do want to kick off this third season solo style. And not like Han Solo, but like the solo that refers to one. Every once in a while, I just get a hankering to do this by myself because it's just a simple reminder that storytelling and reminiscing on the little moments that have kind of shaped our life along the way, it can be so healing, and it can just remind you of like who you are and how you became the person that you are right now. I know you may scoff and be like, I don't need healing. I just want to be entertained. And I totally get that. The majority of this podcast is with the intent of entertaining. But it's also, on a personal level, it's an artistic endeavor for me. It just allows me to connect with people. These people make a positive impact on my life, even if it is only temporary. I see all the beauty of the world through these stories of others. And that may sound naive to you when I say that, because yes, I watch the news. I'm not ignorant to the fact that people are suffering everywhere. But, and I know I hate giving a but in here, but I gotta say it, but art, whether that's music, whether it's making a podcast, a YouTube video, playing an instrument, dancing, painting, singing, or whatever other form of art that you can think of or that you can relate to. All of those forms in the end can bring hope and little pockets of happiness. And dude, we all need those little pockets of happiness right now. I know I do. Like this year, I turned 44. And if you're 20, you're thinking, oh my God, she's so old. And if you're 60, you're laughing at me because I'm so young. But God, this year, it has definitely been a transitional phase for me. Lame as that sounds, but, I've found myself just not recognizing myself, like emotionally, physically. Thought having an excellent sense of humor and time would allow me to accept my changing body, my changing outlook. But no lie, it's been pretty tough for me. Lots of staring out rainy windows and avoiding thoughts of the past because I wasn't sure if I recognized her anymore or if I was still that person. But I say all of these boo-hoo statements just to remind myself that these transitional phases are just part of being on this earth. And we're all going through some sort of battle. And if you're not, you will. So today's Wanderlust story that I'm about to tell is just dedicated to all those fellow travelers that are just in the mood to hear a good old-fashioned travel story. Just imagine we're sitting at a dim bar or a poorly lit cafe, one hand on your beverage of choice like it's a freaking life raft, and we're just enjoying the moment, being with somebody that enjoys the connection that travel stories bring. Maybe you'll hear something in this podcast that'll give yourself a little smile, and maybe you'll give me a head nod whenever I mention something relatable. Here we go. Traveling. Today's travel experience will take us to the land of Ecuador. Ecuador is a country with such a diverse landscape. I mean, you want to hike a mountain, go grab some extra layers and head to the Andes. You want to go scuba diving? You off a scuba? Go and explore the holy grail of dive sites in the Galapagos Islands. I mean, whale sharks, turtles, hammerhead sharks. I mean, the list goes on. It's just what a glorious place to visit. You want to go sweat in the rainforest? You can take a bus or a tiny questionable plane into El Coca and go explore the Napo River, which is a tributary of the mighty Amazon. And this is an especially rad place. if you've hit the age where you have shifted into the realm of bird watching. So I will admit that in my 20s, I used to make fun of those khaki wide-brimmed hats and binoculars, but I have transitioned into a big fan. And if you can add in some khaki pants with a lot of pockets, space for my chapstick, space for my bug repellent, oh my goodness, I am embracing my 40s game. So anyways, Ecuador is a fantastic place to be. It has a couple thousand kilometers of coastline. It is named after the equator because of its location. And Quito, the capital, is only about 15 miles or 25 kilometers from the equator. So it's a nice little day trip, just something to explore while you're in the city of Quito. Here's where our story starts, okay? I'm in Quito, the capital, which the altitude of Quito is about, más o menos, more or less, it's over 9,000 feet. It's a lot different than landing in Miami. So I've personally heard of people getting altitude sickness when they land, but lucky enough, I was not one of them. And also, side note, Quito is the second highest capital city in the world. Unless we're including autonomous regions, then Lhasa has them beat. But if we're not, what would you guess would be the highest capital city in the world? Would you guess Mexico City, Mexico, La Paz, Bolivia, or Nairobi, Kenya? Dun, 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 dun. If you guess La Paz, Bolivia, you are correct. Okay, now that I've gotten my fix of a geography lesson, adventure starts in Quito. I was traveling with my brother, and if you've listened to any of the past podcasts, he's been on a couple of them. His name is Ryan. He's 5 years younger. And I was thinking about this as I was making some notes for this podcast, that like if he was on here giving his version of this trip, I'm pretty sure it would be completely different. So I am looking forward to hearing his reaction to my version. Anyways, we found this pretty sweet hostel high up on a hill. It's got this hypnotic view of the city. Ambiance was set in that hostel. Like, if you're a hostel enthusiast, you'll relate to this. But I mean, you got a fire pit in the corner. You have stringed lights. You have backpackers enjoying this cold-ish adult beverage as they stare out into the lights that kind of outline the city. And of course, there was a traveler playing the guitar near the fireplace, and he was only singing loud enough for those near him to hear. But it just had this intimate feel to it, and I felt immediately comfortable in that space. Kind of like I was supposed to be there, even though it was luck. And if you're listening to this and looking for a hostel in Ecuador, we had picked this out of a Lonely Planet book back in the day, but I did check on Facebook this past week, and it is still alive and kicking. So it is called the Secret Garden Hostel. The Secret Garden Hostel in Quito. Shout out to you guys. My brother and I, we stayed there for a few days. They have a shared bunk bed space. It was super clean, and got out. We explored the city. We visited old churches. We hiked up to these epic viewpoints, and, we just took time to reflect in those quiet moments, which is so nice to travel with somebody who respects the need for quiet moments. During our time in the city, we searched for a tour company because our goal this first week was to hire out some local hiking guides for a hike that we had read about. It's a hike it's on a stratovolcano called Cotopaxi. So prior to this trip, we hadn't hired too many local guides. But man, just to have somebody that knows their land, knows their country, you just learn so much from them. So I totally recommend hiring out some guides whenever you can, whenever you're able to do that. But we were in special need of these local guides because we had read that it involved crampons and we needed some ice axes, and we just had limited equipment. We found this budget tour company in town, and I have mixed emotions about doing things budget now that I'm in my 40s. But when I'm in my 20s and early 30s, I was budget everything. So since we were trying to save money, it was definitely cheapest to get there ourselves via public transportation. So we took a bus, took maybe like 2.5 hours. It did stop a lot, but we got to see a lot of the countryside along the way. So that's what we did. And We get dropped off in town, which was still about 4 miles from Cotopaxi National Park. So I don't remember if we knew that or not whenever we got off the bus, but it was no big deal because we just started walking towards the park, threw out our thumbs, and quickly caught a ride in the back of a pickup truck, which you may think, no, thank you. I'm sure you can take a taxi there, but I've always been very comfortable hitchhiking in certain countries. It's just a way of life in a lot of other countries. Maybe half an hour later down this dirt road, we get dropped off, pay the cheap park fee, and here was our plan. Thanks to the advice of articles, Lonely Planet, all that kind of stuff that we read, we were going to hike around Cotopaxi National Park for 3 days. Purpose of that was because the summit of Cotopaxi, it was over 19,000 feet, almost 6,000 meters. So we needed to acclimate. So our goal was to hike up to other peaks in the park that were over 16,000 feet and do that during the day and then come back down and sleep at lower altitudes at night. So that on the 4th night, our bodies would be more acclimated to where we were at. So it would just give us a better chance of summiting Cotopaxi because there was a chance that at that altitude we could get altitude sickness, but definitely a chance we were willing to take. Quick little insertion of a fun fact here, but about Cotopaxi, it's one of the closest places on Earth to outer space. I know you want to counteract that with Everest. And yes, Everest is a very tall mountain. But I'm just talking about as far as closest to outer space because this world, this Earth, is a little imperfect. So the Earth bulges out in the middle. So the bulge near the equator gives those volcanoes a little extra boost. So if you were to measure it from the center of the Earth and not from sea level, it's actually closest to space. Okay, I'll stop being a nerd and continue. We had a few supplies for the next few days until we met our guides at base camp. So because we didn't want to pay them during the 3 days, we were just going to hike around on the park on our own. We just paid to meet them at the refuge. At this point, my brother Ryan and I were just by ourselves. So we had the basic stuff, right? We had tents, sleeping bags, dehydrated food, water purifying something or another, flashlights, cool headbands that made us feel like we were more outdoorsy than we were. But, sometimes in life, if we just dress the part, it can give us that boost of confidence that we need to accomplish something. Even though I looked super freaking cool in my bandana, I did not bring enough warm layers. And seriously, just thinking about it at this point makes me cold. Like today, me wouldn't go hiking without water resistant or waterproof pants, thermals, insulated, compressible jackets, smart wool socks. Like I'm on my game now. But then me, oh my God, I had freaking khaki pants and this thin brown sweatshirt on under my Columbia jacket. And I love Columbia, but it wasn't one of their colder temp jackets. So this chick was cold, cold, cold. And I'll tell you this, my brother was much more prepared for the mountain weather than I was. During our few days that we spent hiking, we encountered, beautiful springs, incredible views, warm sunshine. I mean, we basically just had the park to ourselves. It was just incredible. Even though I'm making this out to be like fairy tale land, we also did walk up unannounced on a lot of bulls. They won the stare off, so we backed away from their water source. We dealt with massive, painful blisters. That, again, was our fault. And shivered all night long in our 50-degree and up sleeping bags. So if you've ever shivered all night, you know just how exhausting that is. There were a mixture of highs and lows as we hiked around and just made our way through Planet Cotopaxi until that 3rd day we headed up to the refuge at base camp. So their base camp sits at about 15,700 feet or 4,800 meters. The refuge, as I told you earlier, was where we were meeting our guides, and we were going to be spending the evening in like this bunk bed style room with other hikers. So once we got settled in, we met up with our guides and they did a little how-to with us because at that point I had not been exposed to crampons or ice axes. They wanted to do some practice with us and we practiced on small patches of powdered snow and we also practiced on some icier areas. And you just have to walk a little differently with the crampons. You kind of have to have a little bit more distance between your feet so that you don't snag your pant legs. So the guides also worked with us on when we would need to use ice axes and kind of like an elementary how-to. Here was the plan. The plan was to catch a few hours of sleep in our bunk beds and then begin our ascent to the summit at midnight. So quick reminder, this is over 19,000 feet. So the purpose for starting at midnight was so that we could get up and back to the base camp by 10 a.m. Okay, they really encouraged this. It wasn't like a law, but everybody was like, you need to be back down because of the proximity to the sun. The ice there starts melting super early in the day, and it becomes a lot more dangerous with a high possibility of avalanches. And because I don't F around with Mother Nature, my intent was to get back down by 10 a.m. So I was trying to get some sleep, but with the frigid temps mixed with, the anxiousness of the ascent, which I think is pretty normal, mixed with people getting altitude sickness and having to get transported down the volcano to lower altitudes because that is the best way to relieve the sickness. But with all of that combined, it was a sleepless nap. So clock finally strikes midnight. I suit up in my peasant mountain clothing. My brother looks pretty legit. He won the Who Came Prepared with Proper Attire game. Meet up with our guides. And there was a whole group of people that were summiting at the same time because we all had the same goal to try to get back before avalanches started. We strap on our crampons, our packs. It's got some snacks, some water essentials, our ISXs, headlamps, and I swear to God that the first step I took was up. Like, could we get a warm up? I probably should have just came out early, stretched a bit, got my calves warm, some breathing exercises. I don't know what I thought was going to help me, but I just remember being immediately out of breath. And my initial excitement that I had for like 4 seconds quickly turned into like a bit of concern. Doubts rang out in my head. Like, are you going to be able to do this? I mean, I was already getting down on myself within the first minute. I slowly had a positive breakthrough and I just fell into this groove of 1 foot after the other. Step breathe, step breathe. My crampons attached themselves to the snow. They did their job with ease. My job was basically just watching my feet move. And the ground seemed to be the only thing that mattered, that and my breathing. But if you ever take breathing for granted, just go walk up a hill. That is always a good reminder to be thankful for a solid resting heart rate. So about an hour into the hike of step, breathe, I realized that my brother was on this different level of determination. He wanted to summit Cotopaxi and with decent timing. I looked at him and he had this concerned look for me on his face, kind of mixed with he feels sorry for me, but it was also like, ooh, why are you going so slow? At that exact moment, I said, you better keep going and make it to the top before me, or I'm going to be pissed at you. Any of my besties who know me that's listening right now, you know I don't have the weight on me mentality. I do not feel sorry for myself, and I do not get angry when I'm left behind because I want the people around me to truly do their best. And if I'm not on your level, go, crush it, and tell me about it later. Even though my brother had some hesitation about leaving me, he knew I didn't want to hold him back. Plus, we had hired guides. One, whoever, drew the short straw, stayed with me, and the other guy, the lucky one, got to go with him. So my brother took off. Yes, pumped for him. I lost sight of him within the next 20 seconds. But then you also have to remember it's pitch black. Didn't take very far for him to get out of my line of sight. My guide, him and I, we became besties. we continued at a slower pace. I was still on my jam. Step, breathe, step, breathe. And when I think back, I really don't know if there were stars out that night. Like, for some reason, the sky and its contents meant nothing to me in that moment. Sunrise was still all hours away, so it was still dark. I felt like it was getting colder, and my face was numb, and my desire to continue walking was also becoming numb. But again, I kept walking at the slowest pace that this guide has probably ever been forced to walk. We get to this point where my guia tells me in Spanish and with his hand gestures that we are going to rope up to each other. We were at this place on the mountain where the snow-filled trail ran thin, and we needed to connect to each other in case one of us took a wrong step. And at this particular moment, the world became a little less solid, and I felt a little bit of vertigo. He was kind of yelling at me and told me to walk as close to the ice wall as possible, because to my left, there was this deep crevasse. And if you ask, oh, how deep was it? Does that really matter? It was a crevasse. I don't want to find out. I don't care if it's 10 feet or 100 feet. Like, does it really matter? I don't want to fall in. So I trust in my guide and in my ropes, and it kind of allows me to keep moving forward. Step, breathe, until I just stepped right off that ledge. And I can't tell you how or why it happened. No excuses. All I can tell you is that my left foot no longer felt the support of the snow, and my body started to follow. And immediately, my guide, he's yelling. He's got these stern instructions. And even though I don't remember exactly processing them, I remember just throwing my ice axe as hard as I can into the ice and holding it, white knuckling it with all my nervous strength. And I looked up at the guide, just kind of searching his face for more instructions. Him being this epic mountaineer that he was, he had his feet planted in the snow, and one of his hands was wrapped around the rope that was tying us together. He had a calm seriousness to him, like most leaders do. And in Spanish, he instructed me, use your axe. Use your arms. Pull yourself up. Now. Ahora. And the solidness of the word now is what made me aware of the seriousness of my misstep. Only with the help of my guide did I use every bit of energy I had to pull up my hanging body back up to that thin trail of ice. And to be honest with you, I don't remember some instant feeling of relief or gratitude. I was like, oh my God, I am so far up here. Am I supposed to keep going? Why am I even doing this? Why am I here? Get me away from this crevasse. To this day, I don't like crevasses. From here, the details aren't super clear in my mind, which normally doesn't make for a good story. But it's just like a piece of life that I know happened, but I don't really remember the specifics of my surroundings or my exact feelings. I only remember the general timeline. The next prominent moment that sticks out to me was when I looked at my guide and I said, I need to sit down. And he looked at me with glazed eyes and just said in the sweetest voice, we can't. We have to keep going. And as he said that, I sat down in a patch of the most powdery looking snow that I saw. So he noisily came over to me in his lined waterproof pants, and he sat down beside me. And he stared me dead in the eye, and he said, we have to keep going. The sun will be up soon. And once the sun is up, we only have about 4 hours until we need to get back down to base camp. If we don't summit soon, we're going to have to turn around and start going back. So after he's done with his little pep talk, I was silent. I started thinking about random shit, and then I think I was hungry. So I started digging out some flavor of Cliff Bar from my pack, and I went to take a bite of it, but it was too frozen to eat. So I had to put it in an inside layer of my clothing with hopes that I could thaw it out a bit. And now that I think about it, I think I just forgot about it. That Cliff Bar may still be in that jacket. But anyways, I tried taking a sip of water, but it got to the point where I was just like wanting to throw up the water, and nausea was settling into my body, and I was not welcoming it. I was fearing what I had a feeling was coming, which was some altitude sickness. The guide impatiently waited for me to speak, and I remember slowly looking past his face. And behind his head, kind of like behind his ear, a hint of the sunrise was kind of making an appearance in the distance behind another mountain. I just stared at it for a minute, and then I asked him with really no emotion in my voice, and honestly with a bit of a slurred speech. I said, "How much further to the top?" And it's weird how our memories work, because his nonverbal response sticks out to me more than anything on that hike. So he took his gloved finger and positioned it above some fresh snow. And he started imprinting these numbers in the snow. 1, 8, 5, 0, 0. I remember reading those numbers in English in my head and then in Spanish in my head, because I think my brain was just trying to delay the process of what those numbers meant. So after I stared at those numbers for just a few moments, I realized that he was giving me the altitude that we were at. The summit of Cotopaxi sits right around 19,300 feet, give or take. So you're telling me that I still have almost 1,000 feet to go before I reach the top. Like, what the hell have I been doing for the past 6 hours out here? Like, how have I gone so slow? Why am I still so far away? I mean, I say so far away, a mountaineer that's listening to this might just scoff and be like, you are almost there. But in my mind, I felt so far away. And like, why is there a time limit on this hike? Is there actually going to be some avalanches later on during the day? Is it worth taking the risk? Did my brother already make it to the top? Why can't I feel my toes? So those were the flood of questions that I just remember having. As all of those questions were swirling through my head, I looked back at that sunrise. There were waves of light, dark pink with hints of orange, and the light started to give me a glimpse of my view of the earth from that altitude. And oh my goodness, it was so beautiful. All I wanted to do at that moment was cry. And it was just the oddest feeling, because my face was so cold that no tears came out. So it was like my body was saying, you have given this mountain everything you have, but you are not giving it your tears. And it was just such an emotional moment for me, even with the absence of tears, because there was just so much beauty around me. But I just felt like a failure. And I felt like I should have been a stronger person. And I felt like I didn't deserve that view. Whether that makes sense or not, I just felt embarrassed. And I was already rehearsing my story for people who asked me later on in life, oh, you hiked Cotopaxi National Park. How was your hike? Oh, goodness. What was I going to say? Yeah, I thought I was tougher, but I gave up. It was fine until I stopped hiking up. So I just remember being extremely hard on myself in that moment. But then I remember the pain in my head and like behind my eyes. The nausea was becoming so overwhelming. The altitude was winning. It was just reminding me that I'm not always in charge of how my body feels. Unfortunately, this is not a story of how I persevered and overcame my fear and altitude sickness, which I don't even know if that's a real thing, overcoming altitude sickness. But anyways, this is a story about perspective. And from my perspective, I had failed and I did not set out to do what I had wanted to do. Since I was in this zone of not responding, I was kind of awakened by the guide saying, we must go now. We can't stay here. I mean, it was freezing. The last place we should be hanging out was 18,000 plus feet up in the snow, just sitting there. We were not making any progress, thanks to me. I shakily stood back up, trying to will my knees into having more strength. And instead of taking steps up, I was taking steps down. Away from my goal, away from the top, away from where my brother hopefully was, away from where I wanted to be. Honestly don't remember much about the hike down. I remember hints of being scared, moments of noticing that the sun was higher in the sky. And I remember the disappointment I had in my chapstick because it was frozen and not nourishing my lips as promised. So add cracked lips to the mix, and I was just having a moment. However, I do remember the last little stretch to get back to base camp. First thing I wanted to know was what time it was, and it was pushing 10 a.m. But at that point, instead of focusing on my perceived failure, I just propped myself in front of the window in the refuge inside my sleeping bag just to try to stop shivering. And I watched for signs of people coming down, waiting impatiently for my brother to reappear from that trail. So I think I may have stared at it for 30 to 40 minutes before I saw his exhausted body just kind of letting gravity take it down that last little slope before the refuge. And just so you know, he did make it to the top and his teeth were still chattering as he told me that. And he needed his sleeping bag to get warm as well. So I felt needed for a moment as I went and grabbed that bag and just watched him come back to life. And it's funny how we didn't even talk about our personal experience of the hike until a few days later, because our goal was to get down into lower elevation, get our appetites back, get warm, but then head back out to another mountain. We were going to head to Chimborazo. But we just were just tired of being cold, if I'm being honest. So we completely changed our plans, which is part of the fun of travel. We headed to the humid tributaries of the rainforest. And man, we just wanted to go somewhere and complain about being hot. And I can tell you this, we did complain about it being hot. We stayed in these little thatched huts, and we helped the owner of the hut that we were staying in kill a chicken and defeather it, boil it, and made some pretty awesome chicken soup. I don't know if that sounds good to you, but it was delicious. So we ate our hot soup while being hot in our bug nets and went out on a caiman hunting tour that night. I don't know why we did that, but I just remember, it was so hot and it was so wonderful and we loved every single bit of it. So to pull this overly dramatic story of mine together, this short trip was just a tiny portion of my life that made a huge impact on me personally and how I view things. Like this particular hike only occupied 10 hours of my life, and I'm 44, so do the math. It's obvious that it was just a fleck of time on my timeline. And even though this mountain would be considered easy in the mountaineering community, I mean, there are people out there climbing K2 and Annapurna, but for me, it was still a challenge. And I hate the fact that I didn't make my personal goal. Like there was this weird guilt that accompanied me off that mountain, which is weird because I fail all the time, like on the daily, of course. But this would just hit differently on an emotional level. And I guess because I've always felt this connection to nature, I just felt like I was such a disappointment. But no matter the reasons I did it or how I felt about it afterwards, these travel stories, these travel experiences that live rent-free in my head, they just remind me of why I love travel so much. Like the act of travel has so many benefits. And when I reflect on this trip to Ecuador, there's feelings that stand out to me. And one of the feelings I just wanted to share with you really quickly, and it's don't be afraid to do some serious self-reflection. Make sure you have time to sit with your thoughts, sit with your stories, sit with your travel adventures, and examine your experiences. Ask yourself, how have my experiences shaped me? Am I a better person? Am I kind to the people I love? How can I improve? Also, what am I doing right? What are the things that brought me joy then and now? And how do I feel about the changes? So I really do encourage you all to just put down your phones, turn my podcast off, as hard as that is to do, and just get in a quiet space or distraction-free zone or whatever term you want to call it, and just reflect on experiences that have made you who you are. Because there is a power in loving yourself, and making changes when needed is part of that love. If you're listening and you're thinking, oh my God, listen to this woe is me story. Boo hoo. The white girl who made a conscious decision to spend her own money walking around outside on purpose in a different country, and she didn't make it to the top of a mountain. Oh no, I feel so bad for her. Thank goodness she made it through that tough part of her life. I totally get it if you hear my story and feel that way. But I want to share with you that because of these travel experiences and because of my self-reflection, it really has given me this little superpower of being able to stay positive and really focus on positive thinking. And, sometimes I just put on some music, sit in front of the heater on the floor, just kind of get in the zone. And lately, I've been reading this book, and one of my besties gave it to me for Christmas, and it's called A Year of Positive Thinking. It's a little coffee table book, and it's written by a Cindy Spiegel. And to wrap up this podcast, I just want to read you one of these daily affirmations that I read on January 2nd, because it just struck something in me that I want to share. So the title of this affirmation is called The Wisdom of Kintsukuroi. It's a Japanese word. I Googled the correct pronunciation. That doesn't mean I'm correct or that I'm saying it right. So I apologize if I'm butchering it. But I promise you, I did practice it a couple times just to make it sound like I'm trying. So here we go. Kintsukuroi is a kind of Japanese ceramic style. The word kintsukuroi means to repair with gold. In the kintsukuroi tradition, when a ceramic piece breaks, an artisan will fuse the pieces back together using liquid gold. So rather than being covered up, the breaks become more obvious, and a new piece of art emerges from the brokenness. Kintsukuroi embraces flaws and imperfection, but it also teaches the essence of resilience. Every crack in a ceramic piece is part of its history, and each piece becomes more beautiful because it has been broken. I love that thought, though, that we become more beautiful because we have been broken. So, all of my fellow travelers out there, whether you're a weekend warrior, a road trip passenger princess, a solo traveler, a large group enthusiast, or those that just enjoy learning about different cultures and places, I hope you take the time to reflect on your travels. Maybe make a storytelling date night with your partner, or make a game out of it with your friend group. Or just take some time to write about it in your journal or whatever fits your personality type. But it's always good to remind ourselves that these adventures have shaped who we are, and taking the time to appreciate them and highlight those top moments. I personally think that allows us to grow as people and gives us that little needed pocket of hope. So that is it for me today. If you made it through with me, thank you. And I look forward to hearing from you, hearing your travel stories in the future. And shout out to the country of Ecuador. Seriously, if you're thinking about going somewhere with just all the beauty and all the moments to be had, Ecuador is your spot. All right. Have a great one. Adios.
Attention passengers. We've now reached our destination. We hope you enjoyed the flight and have a nice day.